Welcome to Anita Talks History and Genealogy. We're glad that you could join us today. Hit that like and subscribe button and feel free to share and comment. It's kind of rainy out here today, but it is, I'm inside, so it's nice and toasty. And so, where are we at today? It looks like the government is back open for whatever business they're doing, which, what can I say? What I'm gonna say is that there's no Black Friday. We're doing a blackout for this Black Friday this month. We're doing a blackout for their Christmas. We have to do a blackout. Why? Because we don't know if they're shut down, if they're going to shut down again. We don't know what these people are going to do. DJT is talking about going to war in Venezuela, our neighbor. DJT is making enemies in Canada. We're like landlocked between Canada and Mexico. They're arguing with Mexico. All of our neighbors, we're not getting along with any of them. There is no security. There's no reason for us to take our money and go and shop. For what? We don't even know if we're going to have housing next year. We're pretty sure that the health care subsidies are ending. Do I need to go on? We have food insecurity. We don't know if DJT will call up a draft and take our young people and send them to a war with our neighbor, Venezuela, or a war with what, Cuba? Because, Marco Rubio, he don't like none of them. He's a little Spanish man that don't like Spanish people. So he's liable to start a war anywhere in South America. He won't go to Europe and start none, but he will start one with South America. Anyway, so today, I'm just talking generally about, besides the fact that we're gonna stay home, we're not gonna do no Black Friday, we're not gonna do none of their pagan Christian Christmas shopping. Everything with them is commercial. We're not a commercial people. We're a people, indigenous people of the land, and we want our land preserved. We want our histories preserved, our ancestral ties preserved. That's what we want. And one of the things that, I share when I talk about my genealogy is, how long it took for me to put together what they had scattered. It was scattered, the history. Even though my mother told me, this is who we are, this is where we came from, she had very little physical information. Like, we had ancestors who were in the Civil War. We were in Chester County. They were in Lancaster County. And the reason that some of our family members were in another county was that Chester County, which was the original county, was being chopped up. So they went in, and those of you who are indigenous or native or, understand how these people think. So they made a boundary, but the boundary cut my native ancestors' village. So the half of the village was in Lancaster County, and the other half was in Chester County. And then, then they came up with Chester County. Then they cut up Chester County, so the half of this land grant that was given to the Native people, the Okie, there's a land grant, like 500 acres of land grant that was given to the Okie by William Penn in 1704, and half of it was is in Delaware County, and half of it is in Chester County. So they would, when they were making their boundaries, they were cutting the land of the Native people, my ancestors, cutting portions of it and cutting it in half. So the half the village was in one county and the other half was in another county. And that's when you look at Africa and they talk about how Africa is divided up like a pie. That's the same thing they did here. That's what they do wherever they go. They love to do it in China, but China ain't having it. China outsmarts them. Russia outsmarts them. They don't like that. I don't know why they don't like that, but they don't. I guess if they had any feelings, China and Russia would be hurting their feelings, but I don't think they even have feelings. They just reinvent themselves and continue to go back and try to show China another face, but China knows that this is the same face they showed 400 years ago when they came into the Americas and began enslaving and slaughtering the indigenous people. They knew that, the Chinese knew that when they were doing it in Africa. The Chinese said, we can't have that here. So they outsmarted them. So there is China. It is one country. Africa is about 54 different countries because they were able to go into Africa and cut up Africa. They were able to come to the Americas and cut up the Americas. Divide America from South America, North America, Canada, all the way up to the Aleutians. This is the backdrop of genealogy and history. This is what you need to know when you begin your research, is that what you're going to run into is your ancestors may have been in one county and then they divided the county or they renamed the county. It happened with my paternal ancestors in Orangeburg County, South Carolina. They were in Orangeburg, and then they cut Orangeburg up, divided it up, and they made Calhoun County. So that the other, their relatives and their, community was cut in half. They do it all the time to us. But we have to know that in order to, we have to ask those questions. We have to know that in order to find what we're looking for. And so I keep that in the back of my mind, because if I don't find my ancestors in one county, then I go back and look at when did they change those maps? When did they, carve up and create other counties? And they always say they don't want us living with them or near them or in their communities or whatever. I mean, these are the people that came into our ancestors' communities and took the land and killed them off. But they don't want us in their community. Like, when did we ever try to live in your community? You actually came here and took our land and built communities that what you did was you actually tried to take the best areas and set up your little houses or whatever, and then tell us we weren't welcome on our own ancestral land that, by the way, Creator put us here. We were here when you folks came. Creator put us here. You guys came and brought your own myth of your own superiority. And then you're pissed at us. You're the ones that made up all this. You're the ones that came here and intruded on our history. We didn't intrude on your history. You intruded on our history. And you get upset with African people that you enslaved and brought here. Oh, those Africans showed their own. As if that absolves you folks of any culpability. What do you mean? You bought children. You bought children. We're talking to you. You were in Africa burning down villages and taking a Christian Bible with a white Jesus and using that as a weapon against African people. The same thing you did here in the Americas. Use that Bible. And you want us to believe that Creator is somehow chose you people as a chosen people. For what reason? What is the reason that you people are chosen? Anyway, I mean, this is, so when I'm putting together all this history and stuff, and there are some people telling me, oh, you people don't have a history. And then there was other people, telling me that, oh, you just want to be Native. You don't want to be African. I want to be who I am. Whoever was in my DNA, whoever was on my lines, that's who I am. I have an African great-great-grandmother, Leah. She was brought here in 1830 after the end of slavery. It was illegal to sell African slaves in 1830 here in the United States. So they took her to Bermuda and seasoned her. And then they took her and other children from her village. And I'm thinking the reason they went and even raided the village was it was a Muslim. She was Muslim. And they took her to South Carolina. They took her to Bermuda and then sold her and other children. They seasoned them, whatever that means. But I think it means a lot of whippings, a lot of abuse. I don't even know how old she was by the time that she wound up at the auction block in South Carolina. But the man who purchased her is my great-great-grandfather, a white man, Robert Ruth. Yeah. And that white man's children, because we're on Ancestry.com, show up as our DNA cousins. And they say, oh, they come on and, oh, we're cousins. Are you by any way related to Robert Ruth? Yes, that's my great-great-grandfather. We knew who he was. His son, my great-grandfather, told us. And carried his name, carried that last name. And so she's the only traceable African ancestor that I found so far. As far as finding a name, a place that she came from, Guinea. And her journey. it was easier for me to find Europeans than those people. They keep saying, go back to Africa, but yet I found only African I found was Leah, great-great-grandmother Leah. The rest of them are indigenous people. That's who we are. So we're on our land, you know. And if we, they're like, oh, you don't have we do have a history. You didn't steal our history. Our mothers passed our history down to us. We're finding more and more of our history that they tried to cover up. They, like when I say the Mohawks were in the region where we lived, the Native people traveled all the time. They had territories. They had places that they would build villages in the spring, and then they stay there through the spring and the summer. And then when it started getting cold, like fall, they'd move around to another village. And all of these Native people had their certain territories. They had totems. You can't even find a totem anymore. So that totem marked their territory. And they lived next to other tribes who may have had different traditions. But they did not marry within their own, usually did not marry within their own tribe. They would marry someone from another tribe. And and a lot of the natives were matrilineal. The only time that it became we're tracing through the male is after the Europeans came here with their tracing through their male lines. And that whole thing about Christianity has to do with very little about Mary, the mother of Jesus, and a lot more about Jesus, the male. This is how they dominate, use the story of Christ to dominate and say that the woman can't survive without the male. And I have yet to see a male have a baby, carry it for 9 months and have it. So, I don't think it's a male, female, anything. I think this is your part of creation and this is their part of creation, and we join together as one. Nobody is above anyone else. Anyway, so this is, the whole search brought up all these questions. Like what I'm saying to you is that these are the questions that came to me as I'm doing this search, and I'm looking through these documents and I'm seeing my ancestor's name in the 1700s, and I'm seeing my ancestors' names that were in census records, in Revolutionary War records, in Civil War records. And I joined the DAR, the Daughters of the American Revolution, in 1998, after proving, who my ancestors were in the Revolutionary War. And that's the same year that I was accepted into the Monacan Indian Nation. And you have to prove your ancestors. You have to have a connection. And when I joined the Monacan Indian Nations, I met so many cousins. Some of my cousins were, presented as white. Some of my cousins are browner than I am because we were scattered. We were sent to live in different communities according to how they perceived us. So if they perceived you as, oh, they're light skinned and they're, whatever, then you were, you were in that church, and somebody, usually some poor European, and you might get together because you were, exposed to that church or that mission school. But the whole point was to wipe out that native beliefs, the native tongue, to assimilate into the European culture. And that's what they spent a lot of their time and energy doing, to remove us from the land. And then when they couldn't remove us fast enough that way, then they were killing us all. Then they were removing our ancestors to those reservations to free up the land so that more of these people who claimed they had no religious freedom in Europe could come here to our lands. That's what was going on. That's what I uncovered. When they were talking about burning witches at the stake, it wasn't all white witches. It was those people, those women who did not adhere to their beliefs. Think about it. It was, these were times when all these things were going on in the 13 colonies. We call this month Indigenous Peoples Month. There is no Thanksgiving for us. We have Indigenous Peoples Day. And so my workshop that I'm having on November the 22nd to 2025 from 1 to 3 p.m. is about connecting to our indigenous roots. And it's in honor of Indigenous Peoples Month. It's my way of honoring Indigenous Peoples Month. And I hope you all can join us. If you're a paid subscriber to Anita Talks Genealogy, you can come free. Otherwise, there's a $45 charge for the workshop. And also, we're following up. We're not just going to have a workshop and then leave everybody cold. We're going to be following up. So it's a whole process of information that's going to be distributed. So I'm about to close, and I'm still asking, for donations. If anyone who gives more than $50 in donation, you're entitled to a signed copy of any of my books. You can donate at $Wheels920 or Venmo Anita, ANITA Wheels-4, or contact me. If you don't want to feel comfortable donating that way, contact me. And we're also going to have some merch coming through. So I'm pleased. We're moving along. We're getting more and more people coming. And so thank you guys for joining, for hanging in. I want to make it worth your while. I want you to be able to write books and to share, your history and your findings and your journey. That's what I'm truly looking forward to. So until that time, we will say good night.